In 4 short months, my website, reviewstogo.com, is going to be 4 years old. And even in that amount of time, I'm still finding review types that I haven't covered yet. WayForward came to me last week about reviewing the new story expansion for one of their games. I had never even thought about doing reviews for individual DLC packs, but there's a first time for everything. Without further ado, here is my very first DLC review for Shantae Half Genie Hero's new story campaign, Pirate Queen's Quest. Before I begin, spoiler alert, if you have not completed the story of Shantae Half Genie Hero, do not listen and watch the story section. Skip to the gameplay section, which will have a note in the description. Now that that's out of the way, Pirate Queen's Quest is a semi-canon story scenario that begins about halfway through Half Genie Hero. Right after Risky Boots steals the dynamo machine from Scuttletown, right after Shantae completes it, she sails off to gather the parts needed to finish her version of the device, aiming to use dark magic and rip open a portal between the mortal realm and the genie realm. Now, story in the DLC is fairly light. You get cutscenes at the beginning of each stage, right before and after each boss fight, and a little interaction post-stage, though the post-stage cutscenes are more or less just Risky randomly reacting to her minions giving her new pirate gear. Not really anything that affects the story. Granted, it's light, but there's still a lot of comedy in here, especially when you find the bosses. As far as gameplay goes, I don't need to explain how the game works. It's a 2D side-scrolling platforming game. If you want a more in-depth description, take a look in the video description below. I will have a link to my main review for the Nintendo Switch version of Half Genie Hero. Now, the gameplay differences. There are 2 main things we need to talk about. The first is Risky herself, the new playable character, and the second is the stages. Now, let's talk about Risky. She does play a little bit different from Shantae. She has 2 weapons in her arsenal, a sword and a pistol. The sword performs exactly the same as Shantae's hair whipping. The pistol is where things get interesting because you've got a projectile weapon and you've got 3 or 4 different ammo types that you can pick up from enemies to kind of modify whether you have homing shots, a spread shot, shooting off bombs to get rid of obstacles. It just switches things up a little bit to make Risky feel like more than just a different sprite for Shantae. The other difference is the utilization of pirate gear. Obviously, Risky is not a half genie, so she can't magically transform into animals to get around the stages. She uses pirate gear for that. You've got a pirate hat that can help you glide through the stage. You've got a grappling hook that can hook onto stages and platforms. It's mostly all of the gear that you get when you play Shantae and the Pirate's Curse, which is widely regarded by fans as the best game in the series. And that is why this DLC is comparable to Pirate's Curse. It has the same type of feel. Now, stages, they're different, but they're not different. Let me give you the straight point right now. There are no new stages in Pirate Queen's Quest. You still go through the same 5 stages from the main game. Granted, there are a lot of different puzzles, progression moving through it are different, and each stage has a few new enemies that aren't in the vanilla game. But the stages are the same, and almost all of the bosses are the same. Now, finally with gameplay, let's talk about length. This is a $10 DLC expansion for a $20 game. How long is this going to last you? With me, it's been about 3 months since I played the main game, so I've had those 3 months to kind of forget the stages. When I went into Pirate's Queen Quest, I cleared it with 97% completion in a little over 3 hours. Granted, I still remembered a lot, so if you are even farther out from playing the vanilla game, it might take you 4 or 5 hours to do it, but it took me a little over 3 hours. Now, this length isn't bad. It puts it around, I'd say, half the length of the main game, and for being half the price of the full game, that's pretty balanced. Now, the final thing we're going to talk about is controls. Well, not exactly controls, but one thing I have a problem with regarding controls in this DLC. You have all of this pirate gear that you use as risky. Like you use the R button to glide with the pirate's hat, and the X button to activate your grappling hook. You use ZL and ZR to switch over to the bombs. Almost all of this isn't explained to you at all. Even when you look at the item descriptions for the hat, it just says, use your hat to glide through the air with the greatest of ease. It doesn't tell you what button you need to use for that. If you've played Pirate's Curse, you do know. It's the R trigger. But this DLC campaign doesn't do a single thing to explain how these work. You just kind of have to run around and randomly mash buttons, hoping you can eventually figure it out. Now, in conclusion, Pirate Queen's Quest is a 3-hour campaign that's different enough to not feel exactly the same as the vanilla story mode, and it gives series fans a nostalgic Pirate's Curse feel with the way Risky plays. However, the lack of explanation with the pirate gear controls and the lack of new bosses and stages may turn some people away, mostly people who aren't die-hard fans of the series. Reviews to Go rates Shantae Half Genie Hero Pirate Queen's Quest an 8 out of 10. If you'd like to comment on this further, feel free to below or head to the website at www.reviewstogo.com.